a big glass of water on the side already. I've got a jug of water and a dropper already. I've even got a small glass of water and a teaspoon for a Ralphie. It must be Cask Strength night, and one of them is an absolute cracker. I'll see you in a second. Hello, whiskey folk. Hello, welcome everybody. Somebody just shouted that they think I've got the wrong mic selected, and they're absolutely right. Every time you do a restart on this thing, it resets the audio inputs, and I've been caught out many times before. I wonder who I have to thank for that. Wonderful to see you all. Wonderful to have so many of you in to hang out with me for another Thursday night. Welcome to the vPub. I did this very recently. It was only a year ago we covered Cask Strength releases. And at the time, I think I hinted that we would do it quite regularly because there was a lot going on in the Cask Strength arena, if you like. I didn't expect just how much we were going to be spoiled this year. There's been so many releases. And it's just so happened that over the course of the last few weeks, I've managed to get my hands on quite a few of these releases. So it just made sense for me to have a recap on what we did in November last year, look at what's happened this year, but also bring some other perspectives, some other ideas. And a minor apology for last November, actually, but we'll get to that in a wee minute. Let's jump into, I've been really, really busy recently, and I'm not making excuses, but I do feel two things. I feel a wee bit detached from a lot of areas. I need to get the Oswes finished. Once the Online Scotch Whisky Awards are out the way, I'll be able to see the wood for the trees again a wee bit. For everyone that's joining right now, I hope I remember to mention it a wee bit later as well. Please don't forget the Oswes are this weekend, not tomorrow, but the next day. That's Saturday, the 5th of November. Ralphie and I are hopefully going to be here together and kick that off from 6 o'clock UK time. We've just changed an hour. The clocks went back an hour last weekend. So 6 p.m., we might only be 4 hours different, for example, from Eastern US right now. So please bear in mind the time difference, but it's 6 p.m. on Saturday, the Online Scotch Whisky Awards. Myself and Ralphie will be announcing all the winners and the top 10 people's choice charts that you picked yourselves for all of the categories on Saturday, with lots of other insight and guests dropping in and out as well. I hope you're looking forward to it as much as I am. That's been a huge distraction for me. And it's actually meant that the second thing is that these Thursday nights, there's a lot of there's a lot of prep, there's a lot of thought and things go into them beforehand. You've obviously got to collect the whiskies, do a wee bit of research and think about the whiskey and think about what you're going to talk about and what all of that. But actually, when it comes to this, sitting here with you, this is my downtime. I hope you don't think that's rude, and I hope for you guys it's a wee bit of downtime too. Hope that makes some sense. Listen, see, before I go on and pick up the topic and things, I'm going to try and keep it brief tonight. I know you'll laugh at me for saying that, but there you go. I'm going to quickly, just as it all jumps, if I grab that and bring it back, I'm going to jump into the lounge and welcome some of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're keeping in good health, and late autumn is looking after you. Gregor McQuee is in. Time for a Dram is saying wrong mic selected. I think it was your comment I picked up, buddy. Thank you so much. You caught me this time. Multi-Mission is saying, aye, but did you bring your goggles, Roy? My goggles? What would I need my goggles for? That was at the opening menu, wasn't it? Am I lost? I'm lost on something. Alistair Gray saying good evening. Good evening to see you. Nice to see you, Alistair. And MM Karsten is in saying good evening, Roy, as well as Luna Arran. Listen, can everybody raise a wee glass with me to a friend over in Germany, Luna Arran, who's celebrating her birthday today? Luna, it's wonderful to have you in. Why are you here on your birthday? Why are you not out celebrating? I hope whatever you're doing, you're hanging out and celebrating. Luna, many happy returns. It's wonderful to have you in here so that I can raise a glass to say happy birthday. I really need to learn how to say happy birthday in German. Yash is here. Yash Desai, so good to see you, Yash. Evening, Roy and Barflies. Wonderful to welcome you always, Yash. Gordon Fraser is here. Fantastic to see you, buddy. I hope you're keeping very well. Good evening to you, Sin. Made this one tonight. Aye, making it live tonight. I hope you're comfortable, Gordon, and doing well. Pedro Menezes. Pedro, I keep pronouncing it Menezes. I've met you, and I now know that you're Brazilian. Pedro Menezes, I think, is the right pronunciation. Good to have you in, Pedro. I hope you're doing very well. Bruno Martins is here from Portugal. Wonderful to see you, Bruno. Gerben Blocker, my friend from the Netherlands. How are you, Gerben? Graham Young is here too. Cheers to you, Roy. Hope you're having a great week, buddy. I'm having a very, very busy week. I've only got a couple of days left before the Ospreys go out, and I've just been working like a crazy man to put everything together for it. But aye, it's still positive. It's busy, but fun. Blair Stevenson is saying, good evening all. Good evening, Aquavita. It's been so long that I feel like a stranger in these parts. Not to me, Blair. It's wonderful to have you back. Whenever you can make it, my friend. Falsgraph is saying, evening, Roy. I realised that my current open cast strengths are all Irish. So I'm having an Irish cast strength night tonight. Good for you, Falsgraph. I have to say that I was looking through the world whiskies tonight, and I've got one or two there dotted around, but I wanted to focus on the whiskies I have here recently, and it just so happens that for the most part, in fact, they will all be Scotch tonight. They will all be Scotch. That's just what we're going to be talking about tonight. You might remember that last time around when we talked about cast strength, we covered a little bit of, I think it was the Redbreast cast strength that we went into. And there's a couple of kind of high strength barrel-proof bourbons and things kicking around. But I've got plenty of bottles to be getting on with the Scotch selection tonight, so just take that off the table right now. It's all Scotch. Whiskey with Molly is saying, good evening, Roy. Good to have you in, Ben. I hope you're keeping well too. Whiskey Weekend Dram. Harrow, fantastic to see you, buddy, in Hellswood. Evening, Roy. Hope all's well and that you're not too Oswood out. Not at all, Helen. I'm super excited. I think there will be a sense of relief after Saturday's done and out the way. If it all goes quite well, I'll be quite happy. So looking forward to it. And Peter Lee is actually in tonight. Quite early for you, Peter. Saying good evening, Aquaviti and all of our beautiful barflies. Jed Smith is here too. Fantastic, Jed. Peathead Frank over in the Netherlands. Good to see Frank. Dirty Dog is here. Jerry Miller. I'm just trying to grab the orange. There's a couple that's jumped because it looks like somebody's bought me a dram. Somebody's been very generous. Bruno Martins is celebrating being a barfly, saying great topic tonight, Roy. Well, I hope so. I hope it's interesting to you. Robert Zaslow, fantastic, my friend. He's bought me a dram from the States. No comment or anything, Robert, but it's fantastic to have you in. It's fantastic for you to buy me a wee dram. Cheers. I only poured a wee drop of this. It's Cask Strength whiskies, but I might have to pour a wee drop more. MJ Rodden is saying, Agavidi and Barflies, good evening. Cask Strength, now you're talking my language. Matt Bishop, Whiskey Games, bought me a dram. My birthday is as well as Luna's. Wow, fantastic. Birthday twins. He's saying, even Roy would spend Christmas with the vPub if it was on. Matt, I'm looking forward to meeting you in real life for the first time in 2 weeks' time. Is that the Glasgow Whiskey Festival? P.S. I might have a ticket. Somebody has suddenly at the last minute not been able to make it. There may be a ticket going free if anybody's local and can make it into Glasgow for the 12th. But Matt Bishop's coming along to that as well, I believe, and he's celebrating a birthday tonight. Whiskey Games, Matt Bishop. Many happy returns, my friend. Good to have you in here on your birthday. Cheers. And I missed somebody else too. Let's hope I can catch that. Daniel Williams, my friend Daniel, fantastic. Finally got my hands on your Loch Lomond bottling. That's what you get for skimping on an old meal. Now is a good excuse to open it. Well, it is Cask Strength, single cask, of course. Daniel, I hope you enjoy it. I really do hope you enjoy it. It's quite a lovely wee whiskey. I wish I had more of it myself, honestly speaking. And Jimmy Leggs bought me a dram as well, saying there's only one Cask Strength near me, Roy. Can you guess? It's a 54.9%. I can guess exactly what that is, Jimmy. I hope you seemed to start enjoying it last week. It was wonderful to have your tasting notes. It was fantastic, actually, to read your tasting notes, Jimmy. And I hope that it's still sitting quite well with you, buddy. And Peter is saying, don't say it's your birthday as well. Hip, hip, hooray. Aquaviti, let's raise another one. Aye, fantastic. It's always nice when we have a reason to raise a glass in celebration, isn't it? Aye, so I'm looking forward to Saturday. The prep work is not done, but it's never done, and it's always going to be, we're always going to be working on it right up until the last minute. It's just the way it is. And I exacerbated things a wee bit this year because I took a holiday. I didn't have Dramface running last year. I didn't have lots of other things going on too. So time has been a bit more pressure than I would otherwise have liked. But we'll get it together. And the results are in. And at the very least, we'll be able to share the results with you. And for that alone, I'm pretty excited. Bill Monteith is saying, cheers all, we'll have to catch this in the Oz was on replay. So proud that this community has accomplished. Have a great time. Bill Monteith, it's always wonderful to have you in, my friend, and it's a very generous dram for you to drop in, just as non-attendance fees. I hope you catch it in the replay like you normally do, Bill. Thanks for dropping by, my friend. And David Evans is celebrating being a member for 32 months. And he said, Glenfarclas 105 in my glass. Fantastic, David. And Michael Heslin has bought me a dram to say, happy to be here. Time to change. Time change helps. Yes, because there's less time difference between us, right? But only for this week. I seem to prefer Cask Strength bourbons and Scotch at 46. Not sure why. I think you're a wee bit similar to me, honestly. And I want to touch on that tonight. Fantastic, Mike. And thanks very much to Bill Monteith as well. Cheers to you both. Wow, I'm getting through this. Glenfarclas 105 in the glass. It was David Evans, wasn't it, that mentioned that? You might remember that when we did this in November last year, we kicked everything off with talking about the concept of single malt whiskey being widely available on the shelves of retailers and all your specialists and things. It's a relatively new concept. Now, 1968 isn't new to most people. It's certainly before I was born, only just, but it is. And that's when it was kicked off by Glenfarclas 105. 1968, they brought out the 105. But it didn't really, kick off a whole movement of cask strength. That came much later. It was probably well into the 90s. And into the 2000s, where producers, I suppose, could look at the success that independent and specialists were having with single casks served at high strength. They could look at what had happened with Pip Hills and the movement that started in the early 80s, quickly became the Scotch Malt Whisky Society based on single cask at cask strength. And they realised that actually there is a market for this very pure, very powerful, very potent style of whisky. If you're interested in all that kind of history and how all that kind of kicked off and started, have a wee look at the November Cask Strength vPub last year. But if you do go back and watch it, I have to be honest, I scrubbed through it quickly just to kind of try and cover and tick off what bottles I'd covered back then and refresh my memory and things. And I don't know if that's aged well, and I'll tell you why. Everything I said is still valid, and I talked about cask strength and everything, but I did use that platform to really rant about pricing, price. And I think it's my job. I think I'm supposed to do that. I think I'm supposed to push against these price increases. I don't think it's the right thing to do just to kind of accept them, just roll over and be happy that, oh, okay, everything's gone up in price. But it hasn't aged well, because if I look at the kind of, I was quibbling about £5 and £10 too expensive here, and if I was to redo that vPub here tonight, I think I would choose my language a little bit more carefully, because if I can't just say, yeah, this is too expensive just because I'm not happy about the price, I have to justify why I feel something is too expensive. And I think we should talk a wee bit about that tonight. Everything is too expensive. It's all too expensive. It just is. So we have a choice. Do we just stop buying and get out? Do we just stop buying, drink what we've got and get out? Or what do we do? Do we just put up and continue? Nothing is ever straightforward. It's always complex. And I think one of the biggest assets that we have as a community together is that we're very good at working out where the value is when times are tough from a cost perspective. I think we're good at doing that. I'm going to try and do that tonight, but you're going to find that tonight I'm going to at least attempt to dial the discussion a wee bit more towards value with less focus on price. Because if I'm going to spend £80 on a bottle of whiskey and it blows my socks off, there's an argument that there's value there, rather than spend £55 on a bottle of whiskey and for it just to be acceptable. I hope that makes sense. Good. It's not an apology, but I'm just caveating the context of the Cask Strength vPub of last year. The one I've got in my glass with you tonight is one that I spotted on social at first, and I couldn't find it anywhere. It wasn't available for sale at first. I just couldn't work out where it was. It wasn't on the producer's website. It wasn't on any of the retailers. I asked about it, and I couldn't see it. And then suddenly it just appeared. I'm going to pour a tiny little drop more so that I can talk to you about it tonight, because it's a producer that I've started to be a little bit more confident with, because I think the whiskey's getting a bit better, and I think it's got to be something to do with the fact that it's getting a wee bit more mature. This was always quite a simple whiskey to me, and the one I've got in the glass tonight isn't particularly super complex, but at least it's powerful and flavourful. It's got that really quite interesting sweet to salty development. It's quite quickly. I don't think it's peated, but it is peated. I don't think it's not advertised as peated, but I was sipping it thinking, oh, there's no peat in this. But then as soon as there was just a wee drop left in the glass and you left it for a while, you could pick out that smoke. But it's soft and it's subtle and it's part of it. But this is from way, way up in the Northern Highlands. It's a bottle of Wolfburn. And you can see in big gold letters right across the middle, Cask Strength. What you might find much harder to see is that there's an age statement on there too, and I'm going to try and get the camera to focus on that. But it's going to be pretty hard. Can you see a tiny, tiny little 7 there? So they're putting an age statement on this too, age 7 years, and that's not normal. It's not normal for a lot of Cask Strength releases, to be honest, but it's certainly not typical for Wolfburn. We're seeing an age statement out there too. They're doing it in a kind of a strange way with, I think that 7 should be big and bold. We've got 7-year-old whiskey now, and we're selling it to you at Cask Strength. Because I think it's interesting that the product's becoming more and more mature. There's a lot of development there, because in the past, Wolfburn could be a bit up and down. A lot of the releases were heavily peated, and I wasn't ever sure what they were supposed to be. And then more recently, I've had a few bottles and some samples and some bar pours where it's getting better and better. I'm thinking, okay, this is maybe one that we can settle with now. This one tonight, just check what I paid for it. It was £70 for this. A wee bit pricey, I felt. But on reflection, I'm okay with that. I would prefer it to be 65, sure, 60, of course I would. But I paid the 70. So let's judge it based on a £70 whiskey and see what we've got in the glass. That is peaty though. There is smoke in here. There's really not much detail on the very generic box. I've got the box here. This is a kind of, you can use the box for anything, I think. On the bottle, it says that it is sherry casks, bourbon casks, and on the back it does say that it's hand-selected bourbon and Oloroso casks. I went on the website. There's nothing on the website. I went on other websites, couldn't find much. I went into the Good Spirits Company today. They had it on the shelf, and I asked them about it, and they didn't really know much about it either. So come on, Wolfburn, we need more. You know, we understand that light marketing is nice, but we need to know a wee bit more about this whiskey. It'd be nice to know if there's what the makeup was, or what the idea of it is. It going to be part of your core range, or is it a limited edition? It certainly looks to me like it's presented as a core range. Actually, just under it does say natural color, and it also says non-chill filtered. It says sweet, rich flavors abound, overlaid with hints of peat smoke. I missed that. It's tiny, tiny wee letters there in the corner. So it's good to hear that, yes, it is intentionally peated, but I would say that there's a lot. This is a thing of peated and unpeated, or it's very likely peated spirit. It's very clean. It's still quite linear. It's powerful. It's a very sweet arrival. Sweet and light fruits. It's not heavy on fruits. Then there needs to be Bit more fruit here, I think, to my own personal preference, but there is citrus there. There's citrus and lemon. And the sweetness comes across as a wee bit of a sweet vanilla, I would say. And then it quite quickly goes to a kind of salty, briny experience. It's got quite a short finish. And the overall experience is that while it's quite a pale whiskey, there's not a lot of colour in that. There's a real dryness. And the dryness I would associate with more typically with sherry casks. So the sweetness, I think, is maybe coming from the bourbon cask element, and it's got that nice kind of blanket, that development that goes into a dryness and then a slight spice and then finishes on a saltiness. I would have to say that I'm quite happy to have this. I'm happy to have a nice, enjoyable, potent Wolfburn on the shelf. But I think the range of Wolfburn for me, I've kind of always just been looking around the periphery and looking in at it and not sure where to connect. They have got the Langskip, they've got Aurora, Morven, they've got core range bottles out there, the 46% releases. And then they've got just lots and lots of others. It seems to be a really quite fragmented range. And I think that that's a wee bit off-putting, because if you can't get a whiskey geek like me to connect with it easy, you're then just hoping that you're going to get brand fans, distillery fans. I think they need to focus a little bit more on carving out an identity through core range products that can lift their presence and have people connecting with it a wee bit more and understand what the spirit is. We know that they're doing peated and unpeated, but listen, look at Ardnamurchan, they're doing a great job with that very model. It'd be nice if it was just less of a rush of different varieties, I think. That's my take on it. However, I've got something that looks like it's going to be a core range release going forward. It's going to be nice to sit with it. £70, nudge expensive, but I don't think it's too dear. Moira Morrison is in my cousin. She's bought me a dram. What are you doing buying me a dram? Maybe I'll see you very, very soon, and you can... I can buy you a dram, or I can pour you a dram. Cheers, cousin. Nice to have you in. I think she's complained in the past that she's been in, and I've never noticed her comments. The dram experience is saying, great topic tonight. Cask Strength whiskies are always honest whiskies, and they are challenging at the same time. Slancha. Dram experience, thank you very much for your comment and your dram. Just taking tiny sips. But I think that's what I'm going to focus on tonight. What I'm going to do is talk about a couple of recent releases. One of them is a cracker. One of them is just, yes, I'm so happy that it's such a good whiskey. And I'll share that, and it's probably going to be right at the end. I share it, apologies. But if you are picking this up on the replay, you can skip ahead using the chapter markers like always. I've only missed a couple of those this year. But the other thing that we have to remember about Cask Strength whiskies is that the intro tonight, I showed you the glass of water and the dropper and the teaspoon and the keeping water on the side. That's just what Cask Strength whiskies are about. You can take a neat glass of Cask Strength and you can sit on the sofa and sit with it all night, taking tiny little sips and quite enjoy it. And for a lot of people, their ABV tolerance is higher than others. Some people just cannot enjoy Cask Strength whiskies. They need to reach for lots of water. They don't understand why. They think it's fiddly, and I understand that. It's not for everyone. But for whiskey heads, for people like me, it is a really potent, powerful, this is dram experience mentioned there, a very honest way to connect with a lot of our favourite whiskies. So there is a huge appeal to it. And that's been proven by the success of single casks, independent bottlers, single casks, and high ABV releases for the last 40 years. It's been hugely successful. But they are a very specific thing. And if you're looking just to unwind and relax with a whiskey at the end of the day, Cask Strength whiskies can be challenging. They can be a little bit more fiddly and a little bit of a far more specialist niche thing. That being said, when a good one comes along, it can be transformative. because we're not just talking about whiskey with lots of alcohol in it. We're talking about whiskey fully on show, fully amped, fully, it can be invigorating. But just to take the run-of-the-mill stuff and release it at Cask Strength when it's nothing special, I think that's less attractive. So what I'm going to do is go through the whiskies that we have tonight, consider their value, consider what they're up against at their price point and things, and then consider whether I would be saying to you, this is something I can recommend to you. I think the Wolfburn, honestly speaking, right now is not. I think it's a very niche thing. I think that if it's something that you're interested in, if you're interested in connecting with a new distillery or something like that, sure. But right now, I've only had maybe 3 or 4 pours out of this bottle. It's almost a black bottle, so you can't see it's only just arriving at the shoulder now. So I need a wee bit of time to understand this more. But so it's not at the point that I would recommend it yet. Certainly not at £70. But it's still a good and interesting wee whiskey that I'm going to enjoy seeing how it matures over time. I think it's cool that they're also putting an age statement on there. Ross Brereton is saying, I had an epiphany moment with Springbank Cask Strength. So good, but very, very difficult to get a hold of. Thumbs down. I've held off talking about Springbank 12 Cask Strength. I tried to hold off last year talking about it, Ross, but inevitably we end up talking about it. Listen, it's not just one of the best Cask Strength whiskies. Springbank 12 Cask Strength is just one of the best whiskies, and it doesn't really matter that it's different batch by batch. There's a reason that we can't get hold of it, and it's because of how highly it is regarded. It's just the way it is. But it's not the only whiskey that's out. It's certainly the only 12-year-old Springbank Cask Strength. It really is. It's quite a unique thing. But there are lots of other whiskies out there. And while I don't think it's going to last forever that we can't get it, because it's just been hoarded and hoarded and hoarded. Although I was discussing with somebody recently about all the whiskey hoarding, and it can't last forever. And then somebody pointed out to me that Macallan seems to be being hoarded really quite successfully. And the whiskey industry is very bolshy. Even today, they're very confident about their projections and their future growth and things. I think they've got other challenges right now that they're worrying about. So I think we have to be a little bit pragmatic about Springbank and consider that it's going to be a wee while before we can get it easily or more free. It was never that easy to get, but it's certainly super difficult right now. However, there are bottles appearing on shelves. And round about release time, if you ever happen to know someone or if you're going to be anywhere close to Campbelltown, drop in there and they've got the stuff on the shelf. And your retailers seem to be a good job, but they tend to have to fiddle a little bit. They're not putting it online. They're keeping it in the shelf. They're putting it on the shelf and they're putting it out in small quantities and things like that just to try and get it into the hands of more people and all of these things. Springbank, there is still Springbank out there, but I appreciate Ross. You're absolutely right. It's hard to get hold of and it's not going to feature tonight. But there are others that have stepped in to the space, not for the £55, £60 that Springbank was at, but there we go. I'm going to move on to one quickly. I brought out, I just felt that a year ago I should have talked about Signatory Vintage and their Cask Strength series because they brought out this kind of iconic flask style decanter and they made a big deal about Cask Strength. Now, these were not always single casks. Sometimes these were small batch. They were vattings of similar sister casks or whatever put together. And these became very, very successful. And it was projects and initiatives and products like this that really sent the message to producers, distiller producers, that Cask Strength products could be a success because these were very successful and very much enjoyed, actually. In fact, a lot of the Signatory Vintage bottlings right now at Cask Strength are pretty pricey things, but nevertheless, it's kind of that process where, you know, the enthusiast or the connoisseur or the aficionados, whatever you want to call them, kind of lead a producer into doing something, in that case, an independent, because he was an enthusiast and a aficionado himself. He puts it out like that, it's successful, and it kind of encourages the bigger producers to come along and do their own thing, and that's pretty much what happened. It's harder to find a distillery producer with a decent core range that doesn't do a cask strength than it is to find one that does. They're far more prolific than you might imagine, sometimes under a different branding. Sometimes it's not pure cask strength, it's more likely to be a consistent batch strength, but there's lots and lots of them out there. But are they any good? Distell come out with something very, very recently, and I was curious straight away. Distell, let's just celebrate these guys a little bit. You know, sometimes it can be up and down, honestly speaking. They're not perfect all the time, but generally as a policy, 46.3%, all natural presentation right across the board. Tobermory and Leitchik from Tobermory and Mull, Bunnahabhain on Islay, and of course Deanston in the Southern Highlands. And this is kind of their entry-level product. Virgin Oak, this is a non-age statement whisky. Obviously, the title tells you that they're using Virgin Oak as the maturation here, and it's 46.3%. There's no age statement on it. This whiskey could be as young as, I don't know, 5 years old, something like that, 6, 7 years old. Not really sure about what the age is. It doesn't matter, because with some batch variation, there always is. This one is very bourbon-esque, very bourbon-like. This is the oakiest Virgin Oak I've had in a long time. I'm still getting through it. I'm still enjoying it. But I've had sweeter, far more kind of toffee apple, toffee caramel ones in the past. But this is still a good wee whiskey, £35. So how interested was I when I saw them bringing out Virgin Oak Cask Strength? Now, this is not a core range. This is not going to be available everywhere. Right now, this has got a badge on it that says distillery exclusive, and I had to buy this direct from the online store. But I was super curious. It's a nice wee bottle to have around. A lot of fans already love the Virgin Oak. So what is the Virgin Oak Cask Strength like? Is it Virgin Oak dialed up? Or is it something different or a gimmick? Very dense and sweet. Much more flavoured than you would imagine. Toffees, caramel, bright red apple, sweet red apple. Oh, some of that kind of honeycomb cinder toffee. It's very honeyed, actually, honey. Yeah, thick honey. A wee bit of gentle spice. And overall, one of those Scotch whiskies that you could nose a little bit, and maybe there are certainly flashes of bourbon in it. This is a sweet whiskey, and that Virgin Oak is bringing lots of kind of flavors that you associate more with a kind of bourbon-esque profile. But quite appealing. Really bright, really flavorful, really alive, 55% ABV, lots of spice on the palate. Sweet orange, sweet citrus, clementine, but spice and wax. So this honeyed thing, this thick honey, I'm imagining the set honey. Decent finish. Now you might notice that I'm not uncorking these tonight. And in the past, I've had and I won't stop. I'll still uncork things with you and things. But what I wanted to do with these tonight was open them in advance and try and get my head around them a little bit, so that it was more of a kind of less of an neck pour and more a kind of trying to get to know the whiskey a little bit more. This was £60. And when I'm tasting this, there's a lot of flavour in here. If you picked up an SMWS bottle with any amount of distilleries on the label, with any amount of kind of ages on the label, and this was the flavour experience that poured from the bottle for £60, I think you'd be very happy. And I think that that's the kind of lens that I need to look at this through, £60. But I mentioned to you a second ago, at 46.3%, it's £35. And at 55%, so about 12 points more, it's almost double the price. Not quite double, £60. It's quite a jump, but I want to talk about a couple of things there. I want to mention why I think that could be. Antoine Ham is saying, Aquavita always got a strong charred wood note from virgin oak and a good weight along with the syrupy honey notes. I wonder if you get that char from the Cask Strength as well. Aye. I can see where you'd be coming from. And if you've ever put your nose in a wet, charred cask, an ex-bourbon cask, or the what you get from the cask is all of the kind of sweet notes and whatever the previous incumbent has given you, that wet, oaky, slightly tannic side of things. But you also get that blast of what you're talking about there, Antoine. You're talking about. It doesn't smell burnt. It doesn't taste burnt. And it doesn't smell or taste necessarily smoky, but it has elements of both those things. It's very sweet on the palate. Honey, citrus tends to lead. And Antoine has just signed up as a barfly. Thanks very much, Antoine, for your support. Antoine and every other barfly that's out there right now, what you're doing by paying your $1.99 per month, dollars, euros, pounds, whatever it may be, you're keeping the vPubs ad-free forever. The vPubs are not monetized. I'm sure YouTube isn't particularly happy about that, but hey-ho, it means that you guys don't need to sit through ads when you're dropping in and out of the vPub and watching it in chunks or whatever, or whenever it may be, watching it on the replay. So thank you very much for your support. You get access to the wee loyalty badges and all the cool little whiskey themed emojis. I can see you using them very, very well tonight. Terrific stuff. So I want to get on because there's a couple of really good drams that I want to share with you tonight, but the one that's close to the end, I'm just so happy about, to the point that I saw a half a dozen sitting on the shelf today at Good Spirits Company in Glasgow, and I'm only at the neck of the bottle, and I was almost tempted to pick up a second just in case it disappears. It's really, really good. But I think we need to remember that Cask Strength tends to be a specialist product in much, much smaller batches. Can you imagine the scale that the virgin oak goes out at? It's available everywhere all the time. They can get economies of scale. They can drive the margins down. They can deal in bulk. They can do all of these things, and they can put their product out there at a decent price point. Whereas if they do a small batch, a small outturn, now I don't know how many this is. It's a distillery exclusive. It could be 1,000 bottles. It could be 10,000 bottles. It could be more than that or anywhere in between it. I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter. But I know that this is a one-off, and I know that they're testing the water. But I also think this must be tempting right now. Very tempting to do things like this. People can't buy barley right now. They can't get barley. It's worse if you want that barley peated. You can't get your malt. It's just really, really difficult because of everything that's happening around us right now. We can't get casks. People are receiving communications from cask suppliers right now saying, you've had your last batch. It's energy prices are ridiculous, like nothing we've ever seen before. It's going to impact absolutely everything that we touch, everything that we do, and whiskey is absolutely no different. So inevitably what we're seeing is that even if you can get a hold of glass and corks and labels and cardboard and packaging, even if you can get them, which very often you can't as a producer, you're paying much more than you did in the past. So what makes commercial sense? High volume, low margin, lots of resource intense, or high margin, less resource intense, less bottles, less labels required, less corks, less casks, less everything apart from the malt. This is an appealing thing right now. Then consider something like chill filtration. If you need to chill filter something, the amount of energy that it's going to take for these massive vats of whiskies for the liquid to be reduced to close to freezing or wherever it's going to be before it's force filtered through. This is an expensive thing. So I think it's almost convenient right now for producers to seriously look at keeping things a little bit more natural. Is that good for us? We need to wait and see. We need to wait and see what comes out. I know this virgin oak is unlikely to become a core range product at Cask Strength, but there's an argument that there's a space for it. I would like to see it priced a wee bit better. I think it's young whiskey still. Still a youthfulness in there. There's a spiritiness to it. There is a slight edge. It is young, but it's dense and sweet and flavourful. Let's put a wee teaspoon of water in this and let it sit for a second. That's the fun of Cask Strength whiskey. Whiskey Wings, it's good to see you in. My goodness, how are you keeping? It's Mike, isn't it? Whiskey Wings, it's good to see you back. I've been umming and ahhing over the Deanston. I've now plumped for one. Oh dear, it could be on my back, buddy. I think it's not going to disappoint. I think you're probably going to get it and feel like, oh, if this was 50, 55 quid, I'd be much happier. But that's always going to be my whinge if you've tuned into the vPub for any amount of time. I'm always looking for things to be priced a wee bit better. But I can kind of understand if it's a small cask, small run and a one-off distillery exclusive, that kind of thing. I get it. I think that's the one reason why Diageo just bought Balcones to secure their casks. You know, Rick, though, I see where you're coming from there. Diageo are probably one of the least. I can see why Diageo would want Balcones, and I'm pretty certain it's nothing to do with casks. Remember that Diageo, one of the biggest bourbon brands out there is Bullet Bourbon, right? And that's owned by Diageo. If they want to get casks from the States, Diageo are probably one of the most secure when it comes to casks. There's a lot of producers out there, much smaller independent producers very close to our hearts, that don't have the same cask access, that Diageo do. Those are the ones that I'm a wee bit worried about, Rick. I was a wee bit interested to see the fact that Diageo have bought Balcones. Balcones is a brand I've become very, very interested in. I do enjoy the whiskies. I think it's fantastic whiskey. I wonder, it's going to be interesting to see, because Diageo taking them over doesn't necessarily mean it's all going to go to pot. Maybe that's me being just a wee bit too optimistic there. I suppose you could argue that pessimism never leads to disappointment, right? It's all going to go to... But there is clearly something that Balcones has developed there that Diageo see a value in. And it's much more artisanal compared to a lot of the Diageo avenues right now. Diageo aren't really, their business isn't set up to develop that kind of thing very easily. I think that they have the cash to be able to acquire that type of thing. So it's going to be interesting to see where they take that skill, that product. And I wonder if Balcones will end up potentially losing some of their dedicated fan base, right? Luna Arran is saying, but Cask Strength at a high ABV often is young whiskey. Young whiskey more often than not needs the extra oomph. Yeah, but it can also suffer from the extra oomph. Chester Yo is saying, first time commenting in the chat, I'm a uni student at the beginning of Whisky Journey, sipping a Laphroaig Cask Strength and a Port Charlotte PC12 Cask Strength, Slancheroy. Chester, please don't be shy. Please speak. The barflies are super, super welcoming. Everybody say hello to Chester Yo, and thanks very much for raising your hand or putting your head above the parapet and chatting, Chester. You will see one of the whiskies that you've mentioned pulled out a wee bit later. Jimmy Leg is saying, do you find it kind of sad that because a Bunna price went up, no one talks about it anymore? Yes, I do. But when somebody comes along and say, oh yeah, I used to love a Bunna, I love it, but I just can't afford it anymore. It's a bit pricey now. What would you recommend that's in its place? Well, you know, you've got the Arran Sherry cask, the Bodega, right? That's good. It's high ABV. It's a good Bunna replacement. There's occasionally some other things from elsewhere. But to be honest with you, the Arran is well priced at about £55 to £60. But generally speaking, everything, you could argue that a Bunna was probably, especially when it was on offer, was often undersold. But a Bunna is quite young spirit as well, as Luna's already mentioned. I do find it sad because it was one that I used to really enjoy, but I haven't missed it, Jimmy. There's been so many other things that's come along in its place that I've found it quite easy to move on. One of the whiskies I'm going to share with you, the Belter, would have an Bunna fan very, very sated. It's fantastic. Dave Swift is saying, do you think this is why we're seeing more tequila, red wine, white wine, and matured whiskies from distilleries? Absolutely no doubt about it. There's a pressure on casks generally, and anyone who's willing to give a good quality cask in for maturing whiskey, providing it meets with the SWA regulations, which might there might be pressure to relax those a little bit. Maybe suddenly it will be okay to use cider casks all of a sudden. Yes, I think that's got a lot to do with it. But I mean, wine casks have been used for a very, very long time. Tequila is an odd one, isn't it? It's always been an odd one. You know, rum casks, things like that. But remember that especially producers like rum producers, they're after the ex-bourbon casks as well before they put the rum in them. Daniel Williams has bought me a dram. What have you done to me? Loch Lomond is fantastic. Apples, vanilla, lemon, and sweet, a little zingy sherbet. Everybody talks about the effervescence and the fizz. This is the Loch Lomond Aquaviti cask. Syrupy and sweet, and then going peppery, citrus, vanilla, and lime. How am I ever going to have another? I know, it's a heartbreaking thing. You just need to be precious and hope that Loch Lomond bring out some of that Chardonnay product is pure and as clean and as good as that. It's wonderful. Daniel, that's amazing to see you enthuse about it, because there's a danger, we've been talking about that so much, that we oversell it, right? And we get too enthusiastic and we build it up and set it up for a fall. But buddy, I'm so glad to hear that you're enjoying it. Cheers. It's quite that Loch Lomond has got quite a brittle, effervescent palate to it, but it makes it very moreish. So you do tend to find that you, at 54.9, you do get through it very, very quickly. I tear through it far too quickly. I'm struggling now. I've got to be very, very careful. I've got virtually none left myself, Daniel. So let's move on to the next one quickly. A lesson if you're a reviewer. Okay. If you want to say batch variation is a thing in whiskey, right? It's going to be different. And if the producer steps up and says, yes, it is different, here, we'll put it on the label that it's different, one's going to be different from the other. And if you then have the luxury of being able to sit back and play the game as an enthusiast and say, these are different batches, you're inevitably going to pick a favourite, right? You're going to say, I prefer this one over that one. But the one that you prefer a bit less That is not the same as I don't like. If you're a reviewer and you do that, and people read, I prefer this one, they hear, I didn't like the other. We need to be careful. Here's the Ardnamurchan 0922 release. Now, you've heard me talking very, very positively. Come on, focus for me, camera, please. Get my face out of the way. AD 0922. This is 58.4% ABV. This is the second in the same year. So it came out in March. The 0222 code from Ardnamurchan, the first Cask Strength release, came out in March. I loved it. There was about this much out the bottle, and I bought another one as soon as it became available. As soon as I saw that I could get one. But that's hung around for quite a while. That's done very, very well to stay on the shelves, that 0222. I loved that. Loved it, loved it. This one is different. That's it. It's different. The majority of the people that I've spoken to prefer this over the one that came out in March. This is more rounded, more full, more cask-driven, I would say, just by a notch. And there's a kind of sweet sour funk to this, where the first batch was much more kind of mineralic, fresh, slightly cleaner. It's the best way I could put it. I have not tried the two of them together side by side because I don't have any of the 0222 left. Certainly not open, and perhaps I should do that. However, I'm pretty confident that I would still prefer that one, the original one. What we have here is a clear case of two different batches, neither of which are anything other than fantastic. Some people might prefer one over the other, and that's the pleasure of batch variation in whiskey, isn't it? Everyone I'm speaking to is loving this 0922. And I'm kind of going, you prefer the new one? And like you start to second guess yourself a little bit. Graham Young is saying, sipping a Cask Strength Alberta Premium Rye, 66% ABV. Wow. And yes, you need to tape your socks on to drink this, says Graham. Cheers to the Cask Strength movement. I can imagine that's a cracker. Graham, I've got an Alberta Premium here. It was in the firing line for tonight that was gifted to me, my friend, from you. And I'm very, very grateful to have it. Wonderful stuff. So look, there's plenty out of this already, and I've only had this bottle about 2 weeks, and I'm knocking on for halfway through the thing, so I'm clearly still enjoying it. But what I would say is that when you hear somebody forced to make a call on their preference between two different batches or even two different whiskies, please try to focus on the one. It's not they've chosen a favorite out of two, but it doesn't mean that they don't like the one that's come second or third or whatever. But the lesson in this for me as a reviewer, if I speak in that way, I need to be careful with my words. People will hear they won't hear I prefer this one, but the other one is excellent. They'll hear I don't like the other one. Still, here we have a benchmark in Cask Strength whiskey. Ardnamurchan are just very good at doing that perfect thing of balance. I don't know how it is. There's just this alchemy happening on the west coast of Scotland. They're making excellent whiskey, but they're also being able to convey what they're making there in a very, very easy to celebrate way. All their whiskey has been £45 since it came out. There's core range stuff, £45. It's still £45 now. And why are we happy to queue up and pay £45 for 5-year-old whiskey? Because Ardnamurchan have demonstrated time and again that the whiskey is excellent. When they bring out a Cask Strength version of it, this is 17,000 bottles of an outturn, so it should hang around for a long time. You can still buy this online. You can go online and buy this right now. It's at £65, thereabouts, depending on your retailer. Again, why should we pay £65 for a whiskey that's, well, they'll tell you if you scan the QR code, although I think they had a problem with the QR code on this one. maybe it's fixed now. They'll tell you exactly the age of every cask that went into this. But you pay it because you love it, because you genuinely love it, because you know it's good whiskey and it's going to be an exciting journey, enjoying it as it gets better and better. They're able to just get what they can to make a good margin for themselves, I hope, and not have their consumer feeling like they've been fleeced. Ardnamurchan are going to be under the same pressure as every other producer out there, no doubt. And I imagine that with everything, they're going to have to put their prices up in time. But they've done a fantastic job of balance right now. There are producers out there that kind of set a benchmark for us, because we don't know how much they need to sell for in order to make profit. But we can look at producers. I've always used Springbank as that kind of that benchmark, right? Because they're a very inefficient distillery. And if they can put out a 12-year age statement cask strength product at 55 to 60 pounds, we know that they're able to make profit on that. However, that's not necessarily fair all the time. We're in a situation now that as these cask strength releases come out, if we get one that's released at 65 pounds, we think it's fair. The Deanston Virgin Oak has come out, and I've probably a similar age to the Ardnamurchan one at 60 pounds. So that's kind of why I'm looking at this going, well, if this is a good whiskey, it doesn't need to be the same as Ardnamurchan, but if it's as enjoyable, if you can enjoy it as much as somebody might enjoy an Ardnamurchan, 60 pounds is okay. If it became a core product and they were able to upscale things, you would hope that maybe even they could get it a wee bit more price efficient so that we could enjoy it and celebrate it a wee bit more. But we're in that place now that whiskey still shows no sign of slowing up. It's ridiculous, isn't it? More and more people want to get their hands on this stuff. Resources, energy, everything's becoming more scarce and more expensive. So if we want to keep enjoying whiskey, we've got that choice where we just stop and drink what we have on hand, slow down. The prices, I'm not accepting it. I'm not rolling over and just dealing with it. I'm still going to whinge and I'm still going to moan and I'm still going to rail against it. But when producers come out and put out a price, we need to consider the drinking experience and how much value it brings. Let's move on to the next one that I have. I was quite excited about this one because I've got the batch 10 of Laphroaig's Cask Strength. And despite 2021, actually last year, there was 2 or 3 Cask Strengths released all in the same year, and I'm not aware of a batch 16 coming out this year at all. December 21 is the bottling date of the latest batch. I finally bought a batch 15 to replace my batch 10, which is very, very low, because it's fantastic. And if you're in a mood, especially at this time of year, autumnal, just coming into winter, crisp weather outside and things like that, a nice, crisp, smoky, sweet, savoury, densely flavoured whiskey like Laphroaig 10 Cask Strength, it's hard to beat. We've lost Lagavulin 12. I spent far too long in the last Cask Strength vPub in November of 2021 whinging about the price being at £128. Well, now the new one's come out, it's 135, and it's just going to continue going in that direction. It's just very, very, very expensive. I'm not going to buy it, especially when there's lots and lots of alternatives out there. Now, Laphroaig's Cask Strength is 2 years younger than that Lagavulin. It's a completely different prospect, despite being from the south coast of Islay. It's not the same whiskey at all. But they're able to put this out there at... Now, it has gone up a wee bit. You'd have to pay about 75 to 80 pounds for Laphroaig's batch 15, Laphroaig Cask Strength in general right now. But it's a hell of a lot cheaper. Yes, it's probably got a dot of colour in it, but at 56.5% ABV, this is batch 15, as I say, as I hold up to the camera. This has been an absolute pleasure to enjoy. I need to get a clean glass. I've got 2 clean glasses left. I need to pour small measures tonight. Like I say, I think that is definitely a coloured whiskey. Who's to know? I would imagine definitely, but Hey ho. This is a standard 10-year-old, £35, 40% ABV, just a veneer, a mere wisp, a mere suggestion of what Laphroaig actually is. It's super interesting to drink the two of them together, let me tell you. It's not the same thing, and it's not intended to be the same thing. They do very different things. Let's not have a go at one of the legends of all-time Scotch whisky, Laphroaig 10. Okay, it's been produced and looked very similar for the last 100 years or so. So that's not what I'm talking about tonight. But for those of us who need more than what that Laphroaig 10 at 40% can give us, it might be 43% where you are. Fantastic. Laphroaig 10 Cask Strength brings everything that you imagined, and sometimes a wee bit more. And dare I say, despite how much I've enjoyed that batch 10, batch 15 is better. Everything, everywhere, all at once, right? It was a great movie, by the way. It's fantastic. So you've got this kind of massive smoke and moist, wet tobacco and leather and red fruit and spice and just intensity, coastal, medicinal. It's just everything is just hitting you in this glass of incredible, incredible power and flavour. So it's £35 for the standard 40% and 75 to 80 for this. I can buy two 10-year-olds and still have some change left for the price of the Cask Strength. And yet, I would buy the Cask Strength every single time. This, I can sit with a glass of this for an entire night. The 10-year-old, the standard 10-year-old, it would just evaporate, it'd be gone. I wouldn't even really be thinking about it. It's a drink. It's not a flavour. It's not an experience. They're different things. This is just fantastic whiskey. And I'm so grateful that today it's widely available. In the UK, it used to be distillery only. Lucas is here saying Laphroaig 10 Cask Strength meat Farbstoff, sadly, with some E150. So Lucas, you're in a market that you can actually confirm because of that meat Farbstoff labelling, probably Germany you might be, but it is coloured, and I think we can guess that it is. Dirty Dog is saying, Preach it, Roy, I saw Lagavulin 12 Cask Strength on sale for $160 in the US. On sale. Sigh, I get it, Dirty Dog. I mean, it's gone. It's good whiskey. It's lovely whiskey. It's not £135 whiskey. Sorry, there's far too much things just as good as it for far less. Sandra is saying, you raise my good points. The marginal cost of any bottle of whiskey is far less than we think. Winners will be Springbank, Arran, Lechick, Edredor, Ardbeg, which are naturally presented. Unfortunately, if they are winners and they're super successful, as Springbank has demonstrated, they may be a wee bit harder for us to get our hands on, Sandro, but hopefully they encourage other producers to step in and do similar things. Jeff Whiskey's saying, really is a great movie. Don't think about using that bottle for something. If anybody hasn't seen Everything Everywhere All at Once, get it watched. It's fantastic. Neil Cochran saying batch 10 Laphroaig was okay, but not a standout. I enjoyed mine very much, Neil, to the point that I knew I was going to replace it. I'm telling you, I think that batch 15 is better. Chester Yo is saying, I have a Laphroaig 10 Cask Strength batches 11 and 12, which are two of my favourite whiskies, but I heard subsequent batches have become sweeter. How does batch 15 compare with previous batches? Well, do you know what? I feel like going down, if I didn't have to walk around the back of the desk and go around and dig, it's just a wee bit out of reach, Chester. If I went from memory, I think that there's an argument sweeter, but sweeter in the sense that it's not sugary, it's kind of a sweeter fruit. There's a kind of there's also, I mentioned it earlier, the tobacco leather thing. maybe a wee bit of chocolate. There is a sweetness to this, but it's not sickly. It's not sugary sweet. Sweet fruit. Finish is dry. A little bit of bitterness in the finish, but that's typical for Laphroaig. A little bit of salinity. A little bit of oak. I wish it wasn't coloured. I really do wish it wasn't coloured. However, we're in a place where, you know, it's Beam Suntory. It's what they do. It's a 10-year-old product. The cask that it comes out of, it's too pale. They decide. So they say that for consistency, which is nonsense. It's market expectation that they've driven, that they colour it to a point where people expect it to be the colour it is. But that's dark. That's a sherry cask whiskey that we have there in terms of colour. It should be much more like that. That's what I would expect Laphroaig 10 Cask Strength to be. Okay, moving on then. How are we doing for time? Because I just need to share this with you. A wee bit of an apology from me for last year. Sorry, not sorry. I'm halfway through this Bunnahabhain, 12-year-old 2021 release, Cask Strength, and I declared this to be not what I expected when it was launched last year. A lot of you loved it. A lot of you agreed with me. A lot of you weren't sure what this was supposed to be. And I think the problem is, look at our Laphroaig. We've got a 10-year-old official and a 10-year-old Cask Strength. So we're going to compare the two. We're going to imagine that the 10-year-old has been amped and delivered in a much more vivid way. And the 10 and the 10-year-old Cask Strength, we're expecting them to be a wee bit similar. The Virgin Oak from Deanston, we've now got a Cask Strength version of that, and they're just bringing the exact same product. Other producers do it differently, like Springbank will bring out their 10-year-old, and then they've got a Cask Strength version with an age statement, but it's 12-year-old, and they don't have a standard 12-year-old. Glenallachie do the same thing, but flipped around. They've got a 10-year-old Cask Strength, but then a 12-year-old at 46. So they're making it very clear that these are different things. So when Bunnahabhain brought out their 12 last year at Cask Strength, and they've got an official 12, we expected the 12 to be amped up. And that's not what we got. We got a very good, but very typical, and I felt a kind of available everywhere Bunnahabhain experience, something that you could get from independents and elsewhere. And I have not bonded or gelled with this bottle, not because it's not good whiskey, but because I've got so many others that are very, very similar to it from the exact same distillery, from other places, North Star Spirits, other indies. I just felt that they had kind of just missed the target for this last year. I kind of stand by it. It's still good whiskey. Like I said when I was talking earlier, if you prefer something a bit less than something else, that's not what people hear. They hear, I don't like. I'm being very clear. It's still good whiskey, but I expected something different. This year's release, 2022 release, is just out, and I'm just beyond the shoulder on this bottle. It's a dark bottle you're not going to be able to see, but just beyond the shoulder. This is not going to last. This is not going to hang around. Let me show you the colour of this thing. Look at that. Why did I not show you and spend any time celebrating the colour of the Laphroaig, just to pass comment on the fact that I think it's coloured? Why am I dwelling on this colour? Why am I holding it up to the camera here and saying, look at this? Because we can celebrate this. Why can we celebrate this? Because it tells us on the bottle, this is natural colour. No added colour and non-chill filtered, it says there. 12-year-old age statement, 2022 edition, 56.6% ABV. Oh, it almost takes you to Warehouse 9 at Bunnahabhain. Everything is here. that weird kind of very specific Bunnahabhain thing where the malt is cranked right up, where the citrus is cranked right up. So you're thinking, you know, marmalade and tart, and you've got the citrus fruit, and you've got the rind there as well. The sherry spice it's there, but it's kind of got this, especially in a 12-year-old, the standard 12-year-old, it's got this really soft sherry to it. But this is cinnamons and nutmegs, sandalwood, cedarwood, sandalwood, and a really boozy, soaked fruit, like think of a trifle type thing. This is red whiskey, bright red whiskey. Superb. Superb. It's this time of year. This is exactly the style of thing that you're after. You know, I'm really tempted to take a wee bit of the peaty Laphroaig and just kind of make a wee kind of Islay blended malt mix. But this is fantastic. This is what I expected to come out last year. Bang. This is the Bunnahabhain 12-year-old, which is quite a soft thing despite being at 46.3%. But it's sherry forward, unpeated, or very, very super trace lightly peated Islay whiskey that's well loved by so many people. It's a staple here. I've always got it around. This is that amped right up. Bunnahabhain 12 is 40 to 45 pounds to buy it. This is 80 pounds. Similar increase to what I've been talking about. Would I have a bottle or two of the standard 12 or a single bottle of this? I think I would pick a single bottle of this. Not last year's. Not last year's. This is different. This is a different value proposition. Everything I talk about on this channel is subjective as hell. I hope you all know that. But I think objectively, this is a bloody good whiskey. Peter is saying, fully agree, 10 Cask Strength is more than 2 times better than the regular 10. Talking about the Laphroaig, Frank. Fantastic. Oh, it's jumped. I must have been missing a lot of chat. Sandro is saying, Fazzolari is saying, bravo, Roy, that Bunna 12 Cask Strength is worth celebrating. Well done. And Rick Johnson is saying, Aquavita, that's fantastic. David Brody's in. He's pouring out the hearts tonight. David, you're always pretty pragmatic. You know, I've not always had the nicest things to say. Occasionally there's some odd things that happen. But generally, I say it because I'm a huge Bunnahabhain fanboy. I love the whiskey. I love the products that's coming from Distell generally. You know, occasionally they can get it a wee bit silly. But when you get it right, you kick it clean out the park. And this is an absolute belter. I tell you what I'll do. I'm going to pour it into the same glass. Let's do that. I've got 2 glasses, and I'd forgotten that I'd laid this out earlier. I've not done this in advance, so if I get caught out tonight, then fine, it's okay. But I'm going to pour in the other glass the same measure of the 2021. And see if there's, I can see a colour difference here. I hope the camera picks that up. And why do we care about the colour difference? Well, we care about the colour difference because, so this is a 2021, so it's a notch or 2 paler than the darker 2022 here on the right. We care about it because it's part of the fun of enjoying whiskey. And if it's natural and they tell us on the bottle that it's natural, we can enjoy it. This is nuts how different. This is the wonderful thing about batch whiskey, you know, that celebration. There are people out there that's going to prefer the 2021, no doubt. Just exactly the same as the Ardnamurchan example I gave you a minute ago. But there are people out there that's going to prefer this one. And I think that people are going to, regardless of which one you prefer, you're going to take my point that if you're going to put out a 12-year-old and a 12-year-old Cask Strength, people are expecting it to be the same with a, you know, different ABV take on it. That's what this does. (2021) is good whiskey. Fruit is still there. A bit more spice there, a bit more oak. This is slightly... It's almost like there's a Bunnahabhain thing missing from this glass. This is so much like the Bunnahabhains that you can pick up fairly easily from indies. This is a very rare thing. There have been expensive casks, sherry casks gone into this. I don't know what kind of sherry casks. I'm going to guess European oak, Oloroso. It fits with Oloroso. It's not super sweet or sickly or syrupy like a PX. This is a different prospect. It's just, this is what I have come to associate Bunnahabhain 12 to be. This is good whiskey, but it wasn't Bunnahabhain 12 enough. I've missed a dram from somebody, I think. Brian Caballes, he's saying good day, evening from Melbourne, Australia. It could be Caballes. I don't know if you're pronouncing your surname Caballes then. Brian, it's nice to have you in. It's rare that I catch the vPub live, of course, because it's early in the morning. He's saying 10 a.m. live here in Australia. Cask Strength whiskey is an honest representation of any distillery. Prices are steep, but we love whiskey. Aye, it's a good way to think about it, Brian. And if you are in a position where you enjoy the higher strength ABVs, and you're quite happy to sit and play with water and have fun with the whiskey, Cask Strength is very, very honest. And Jimmy Leg is saying if you stick a pencil that you just used the razor onto a lemon and twist it 3 or 4 times, you have the nose of Roy's Loch Lomond. Is that right, Jimmy? That's incredible. Are you drinking a Loch Lomond tonight, Jimmy? And I hope that that's a positive tasting note. It sounds it, buddy. 2021. 2022. I paid the same for these. £76, something of that order. I think that's pretty much what I paid for the 2021 last year. So it's a wee bit pricey. It looks like it's going to be an annual release, and it's pricey. But then Bunnahabhain will turn around to you and say, Lagavulin are selling their 12-year-old Cask Strength for £135. Now, you could have 100 arguments over that and why that is and everything else. But it's difficult, isn't it? It's difficult to suggest that this should be out there at £60 or £65 when that's happening. Laphroaig 10 Cask Strength, as I've just held up to you earlier, 2 years younger, coloured. I would have this over the Laphroaig, believe it or not. I mean, not much. They do different things, but they've priced it about the same price point as the Laphroaig. That's the place that we're at. If we want to be enthusiasts and if we want to engage with this, as Brian mentioned when he bought me that dram, these style of whiskies, I think we have to accept that we're going to have to pay for them until they become much more ubiquitous than they are today and they can get the economies of scale and everything. But I also think that we're witnessing a time where it's super appealing for producers to go towards this presentation because of the scarcity of resources right now. Jimmy and Brian both, I'd like to thank you both for your drams. Sláinte to you. Sandro's saying, Aquavita, excellent comparison, grazie. Like I say, Sandro, I'm pretty confident that there are still people out there that's going to prefer the 2021 rather than this much more overtly sherried 2022 expression. But for me, this time of year, you know, the one I want to go back and sip, and you know, you can see I'm probably going to do that, is I'm just automatically drawn to the 2022. Both are good whiskies. And I think, as I've mentioned in the past, if you picked up the 2021, I don't think you're going to be disappointed. However, I think there's going to be quite a few Bunnahabhain fans that probably didn't bother to pick up another bottle of the 2021, even if it was available to them. Timo, a member of the Barflies, here you are, Roy. He's bought me a wee dram as well. Timo, I wonder if that's a new name. If it is a new name, welcome. It's nice to have you in, Timo. Cheers and thanks for the dram. There is one more as a wee bonus. How are we doing for time? 1:20. We're going to finish under 2 hours tonight because I need to be up early tomorrow. I've got videos to edit. I've got screens to prepare. I've got animations to do for the Oswas on Saturday. So I'm going to get up early and be a very busy little aquavitae for tomorrow. But here's something that's interesting, because Bunnahabhain 2021 sold out very, very quickly. So my opinion doesn't really matter. It's in demand. There's a lot of there's a huge fan base for Bunnahabhain that's going to sell. Even as I said last year, and that's why it doesn't age very well, 5 or 10 or 15 pounds too expensive, it didn't matter because it was gone. I hope that maybe there's more of this year's release. Maybe it'll hang around a wee bit longer. I don't know. But I hope that it gets into the hands of fans, because I think if you're a fan of Bunnahabhain 12, this year's release is going to sit with you much better than last year's. Regardless, I don't expect to see it still on the shelves at Christmas time. Like I say that not knowing what the outturn is. But there are releases out there that come out priced at a point where the assumption is that it's going to fly off the shelf and sell anyway. And it does not. Because we may be enthusiasts. We may be ridiculously, willing to pay silly amounts of money for our love of whiskey. But we are not mugs. You can go on today on any of the online retailers and buy Diageo special releases from 2017. Collectivum 28, anyone? Chininic 17. That is just bizarre. At one point, you could go on and buy Lagavulin 12 from 2020, 2021, and 2022 on one site at retail. And the prices were the year they were released prices, so you could see the prices going up. If you go to Lagavulin Visitor Centre, this is back in June. I've not been there since June, but back in June, not only did they have the previous releases of the 12-year-old Cask Strength in there, but they also had the previous releases from Kalila, Fashil releases, 2020, 2021, 2022, with the prices going like this, showing you the increase year by year. And they were still there. They were still on the shelf. It's like nobody's paying attention. Because it's a difficult thing to reduce the price and look cool, isn't it? That's not an easy thing to do. Big Ed has brought me a dram. Big Ed, that looks like a brand new name, and he's saying cheers from Ohio. Cheers straight back to you in Ohio. Big Ed, it's nice to have you in. It's nice to have you join the vPub. Cheers. Maybe you've been able to join because there's only 4 hours, I think, between us tonight, Ed. But that's what's happening. To the point that I have spent a year wondering whether or not I'm going to buy this bottle of whiskey. The special releases that came out in 2021, I was interested in a couple. There's always a couple that's got my eye that I'm interested in, but the ones that came out this year were odd. There were just odd things happening there. I mean, Virgin Oak and £250 non-age statement Mortlach and just bizarre stuff all over the place. It was easy for me to avoid this year, £135 for Lagavulin 12. But this is still haunting me. It was still floating there. It was still around all the time. Why? When have you ever seen Oban available in any other guise than a 43% 14-year-old? You just don't see it. like so many other of Diageo's distilleries. So this 12-year-old came out. I felt it was far too expensive. A 12-year-old whiskey. This is £109. So I'm whinging about a 12-year-old Cask Strength whiskey at 80. Diageo are saying, yeah, £109. What Diageo are also showing us is that it's too expensive. Why? Because here we are, at least a year in, and it's still sitting there gathering dust. Special release, my arse. Just a release. Annual release, maybe I'll give you that, Diageo. Annual release. But here I am, I've been suckered. I bought it. I finally decided, let's go, let's try it. I'm not going to review this bottle tonight. I can only give you a first impression because I'm uncorking it literally right in front of your eyes. It frustrates the hell out of me because Diageo sit on some of the most pretty distilleries, and I don't mean building-wise, I mean in terms of distillate that we have in Scotland. And I am a big fan of the Oban 14. So to have a Cask Strength, fully natural representation, 12 years old, this is 56.2%. Neck pour fresh out the bottle, light lemon and honey, salty, almost, but very delicate, very... So where everything else tonight that I've been sharing has been big and bold and dense and obtuse, this is delicate. I'm going to leave the lid off this for a little while. Pop it there. Lemon again. Quite outdoorsy, grassy. Dry. Creamy. Wow, creamy. Creamy malt. Looking for smoke, not really finding any smoke. Very Diageo in style. Damn. Damn. We'll leave it at that, will we? Aye, it's good. Jerry Miller is saying, I will defend the 2019 special release of Talisker 15 Cask Strength. I was also a fan. I'm about to finish the bottle and will be disappointed not to have another. I was a fan of that. Not as much as a fan as I was of the 8-year-old 2018 release. The 8-year-old 2020 release, nah, that was the rum one. Didn't enjoy it much at all. But the 2018 and the 2019, Jerry, I enjoyed them both very much. Lucas is saying, I'd love to try an Oban that's higher ABV. The Oban 14 is already a damn fine malt. Exactly where I'm at, Lucas. That's exactly where I'm at. I have to say, first sip of that is pretty good. Diageo Special releases my arse right of 2022. Sandy McDonald is here. I have to give Bunnahabhain Cask Strength a shout out. Absolutely. That's twice now I've done Cask Strengths and I've not mentioned Bunnahabhain. That's not very fair for me. 2010 vintage, 58.5% is lovely. In my very amateur opinion. I have to say, anytime anybody asks me to recommend them a Bunnahabhain, I go straight to the Cask Strength. It's always, even if it fluctuates a wee bit, it's still pretty consistent and it's good. Has the Oban 14 taken a wee price hike recently too? £70 we saw it for recently. Absolutely, absolutely it has. And if nobody look at the price of Kalila 18 and 25, please. Diageo, I don't know what they're doing. Aquavita, you're a big fan of the Oban 14. It was one of those kind of developmental whiskies for me, Jimmy, and I still like to have it around. If the price hikes, it's one that I'm going to find easy to miss, though. And Whiskey with Molly Ben is saying there is the title of the review, Special Release My Arse. I just think that Diageo, when it comes to their pricing, when they release things, it's almost like they're just throwing darts. It's just like, and it's never in our favor, right? It's always just ridiculous. Sugar Kitty is saying, you really, really, really wanted to hate that, didn't you? No, I didn't want to hate it because I wouldn't have bought it. But I wanted it to be, I wanted it either to be the last time I ever bought a special release, or I wanted it to be like, it's absolutely worth everything that they're asking for it. If we're talking about value, if that's the theme tonight, it's not £110 whiskey. It's not. No, absolutely not. That's easy to say. But it is remarkably refined and remarkably elegant for something at 50, what did I say, 56.2%. 56.2. It's ridiculously refined for that. And Whiskey with Molly saying, no Glen Scotia Victoriana tonight. You know, Victoriana is wonderful, fantastic whiskey. Superb, easy to engage people with because it's got that big, huge, dirty, extreme flavour hook. And it does say Cask Strength on the label, but it's batch strength. Unless maybe Michael Henry's in tonight and he'll come in and say, no, we've at it to that specific ABV, but I think it's reduced to that ABV. So my definition of cask strength would be that it comes from the cask and it goes into the vat and then it goes into the bottle, and whatever the ABV is the ABV, that's cask strength. But as soon as you alter the ABV for whatever reason, to make it below a certain ABV limit or to make it a consistent ABV or whatever, then to my mind, that would be, you'd have to call it something like batch strength or whatever. But actually, Ben, it's pretty valid to talk about Victoriana in the context of everything that was spoken about tonight. And Darren Scorza, a barfly, who's bought me a wee dram, has said, just a wee dram tonight. The rest of my dollars will need to go to tracking down a Bunna 12 Cask Strength 2022 here in Chicago. I hope that the outturn is big enough to make it to you, Darren. I don't think you're going to be disappointed, but please don't pay over the odds for it tonight. Know that I've judged it tonight fully on the fact that I paid £78 or something. It's about 78 or 79, I think I paid. Mikey Hayes in. Mikey, so it's always a pleasure to see you in, buddy. I don't mind that it's late. It's wonderful to see you in, and I hope you're keeping well. He's saying evening. Oh, sorry, I'm late. And Danny Hebington is here. Good to see you, Danny. Makes me suspicious when they need to jazz labels up and call it special. Almost makes me think they're hiding something. Well, I'll also admit that I always used to love how classic and elegant and understated all the Diageo releases were, even the special releases. This one was on the limit of what I found acceptable. I think it's still quite attractive and pretty. Those kind of muted and desaturated colours and things like that, I think it's still quite classy here. But the ones that have come out in 2022 are garish. And it's nothing to do with the artwork. I think in their different context, the art might look a bit more appealing to me, but on bottles of releases from Diageo, that's not the right context for it. I just didn't like it so much. However, I'm quite happy to look past the presentation, the aesthetics and things when it comes to good liquid at good prices. But both of those things, it makes it easy for me to not even care about the artwork. Petehead is saying, closing off the evening with a sip of €80 whiskey and Octomore. Did you get an Octomore for €80 on a ludicrous offer? Okay, so you got it at a great price. And Pierre Croft is saying, did you taste your Cask Strength whiskies neat at first, or do you add water prior to your first sip? So, as you've noticed with me tonight, Pierre, I hope you've noticed that generally I'm sipping it neat. All cask strengths, and I'm sorry I never made the point tonight, Pierre, demand that you play with them with water. If you don't, that's your call. It's up to you. You can do with what you want with your whiskey, but the whiskey hasn't given everything to you until you've played with it. I think that there's a lot of discussion out there about what water you should add and how much and how you should do it. Do your own thing. People talk about using very, very specific water and things. If you're in an area that's got pretty clean tap water that's drinkable and it doesn't have any overt flavors or smells to the tap water, use your tap water. That's my advice. Some people like to invest in proper water, but be careful about buying mineral waters and things as well, because they can be overtly flavored too. But just add a wee drop first. That breaks up the whiskey, it opens up the whiskey, it gives that kind of reaction. I always use the analogy of the kind of dry summer's day and the first couple of drops of rain falls, and it only takes a few spots of rain to land on the ground for you to get that smell coming up, right? It's almost like just an awakening, a chemical reaction type thing that happens in the glass just with a few drops. After that, when you start to add more drops, teaspoons or a pour of water or whatever, then you're in the realms of dilution. And that's still great fun. And layer by layer by layer, as you add more and more, you're changing the whiskey. And inevitably, you're going to get to the point that you drown it. But you only need to drown 1 dram to know that you have. And actually, what tends to happen is that you get to the point that if you add any more, you're going to drown it with experience. That you've got it to the point that that's probably enough water. And then you've worked out where you think the sweet spot is. But the sweet spot is almost always based on mood as well. Terrific stuff. Jimmy Legg is saying, and Cask Strength whiskey demand time. I see so many people drinking their whiskey way too fast. Look at you, Peter Lee. I have to say that, I don't know about Peter Lee, but I have to say that for me, it's odd, isn't it, Jimmy, that the stronger the drink, the more whiskey, the more ABV that's in the whiskey, the more you slow down with it, the more you take your time. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. It's counterintuitive. 58, 56% whiskey that I'm drinking tonight, you can't throw back. It hurts. It deserves and demands your respect. Peter Box, good to see you, Peter. The 2019 Cragganmore special barn owls were very elegant. Yeah. Was that 2019? Was that one? I bought the 2020. I think the 2020 Cragganmore was the one that could have been 2019 and 2020 had the kind of animal, the nature things on it, didn't it? So it could be 2019. But the 2020 Cragganmore was a 20-year-old, and that was £120, which I felt was great value. It's weird, isn't it? And Ethan Sterner is saying, I was going to mention Ugadal earlier. Again, Ugadal is a wee bit like the Victoriana. I think it is. It's Cask Strength. I suppose you could say that, but it's a consistent batch after batch after batch. It's the same strength, so they're clearly reducing it. But it's a core range Cask Strength product. And I think it's valid to talk about it tonight. Ardbeg, Ugadal, Corryvreckan remain pretty decent whiskies. And they are not at the point where they're gouging yet. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? Everything is a bit crazy. Anyway, we're drawing to a close tonight. The wee bonus for me tonight was I was too curious. I've kicked around for a year or more than a year about this Oban, and I've finally just gone and spent the money on it. Am I upset? No, I've scratched an itch. I've paid too much. But I have it here. And, in a rare case like Oban that's not normally available, I'm kind of interested to have it and spend a bit of time with it. We do have a quiz tonight. We always have a quiz tonight. I think the quiz is one of the easiest ever tonight. And I always say that. I know I always say it. And you're always like, oh my goodness, it's going to be a killer. But generally, I've actively been trying to make the quizzes a bit more fun. I don't want anybody to ever score a 0. I don't want anybody to go home and say, oh, I only got another 2. I'm trying really hard and I got 2 or 3. I would like to have questions about things that we are actively talking about together as a community, things that we're enjoying, things that we're connecting with, and have people actively get things that they get, questions that they feel like they know, and get questions that they feel like they can have an educated guess at and feel confident about it. But it's hard to do that. It's very easy to put together difficult quiz questions. That's easy. But to put together an interesting, easier question is much trickier. But I've tried really hard to do that tonight. Probably made a backside of it, like I did last week on the 10th question. but we'll give it a go regardless. Listen, if you're going to pull your parachute and bail out now, like so many of you do before the quiz at the end, let me raise a wee glass to say thank you very much for participating. It's wonderful to have you. If you're considering staying for your first quiz tonight, just remember that it's always multiple choice. You don't need to share your score with everyone. You don't even need to put your answers in. You're only playing against yourself. Give it a wee go, and you might have a wee bit of fun with it. Certainly the people in the chat tend to have a lot of fun with it. But thanks for your time tonight. Cheers. 1 hour and 40 minutes in exactly. Let's get the quiz on the go. Good luck, everyone. Like I say, I do kind of feel like it's a wee bit easier tonight, but we'll wait and see. 10 questions, multiple choice. Question 1. There will be a theme. I think there's quite a lot of Cask Strength ones in here tonight. Glenfarclas released the 105 as far back as 1968. What could the 105 mean? Does the 105 mean A, the 105th anniversary back in 1968? Does it mean B, 120 degrees US proof? Or does it mean C, 60 degrees imperial proof? What could 105 mean in the context of Glenfarclas's 105? Gordon Fraser is reminding himself that he got 10 out of 10 in the last quiz. Sandro is saying, Aquavite, we love and learn from the quiz. Thanks for doing them easier. Well, if I do them too easy, we might learn a wee bit less. There's always a balance, Sandro, but I'm just glad you enjoy them. So they tend to be easier in the first half of the quiz, the first 5 questions. If it looks difficult, read the question and slow down a wee bit and consider. Pause for a bit. Does the 105 on Glenfarclas, could it mean A, the 105th anniversary in 1968 celebration, maybe, B, 120 degrees US proof, or C, 60 degrees imperial proof? If I miss the quiz, something very bad has happened, says Jimmy Legg. There must be multiple Jimmys. Jimmy, it's just so great that you're always here, and it's great that you stay here right till the end. It's wonderful that this has... it's just nice to see the same faces week in, week out. It's lovely to welcome new faces and welcome back folk that have their life has taken them elsewhere. That's what the vPub is all about. It's like a regular pub. If you can make it, make it. And if you can't, it will still be here for the next time you can make it. Anyway, the answer here is absolutely 120 degrees US proof. 105 talks about imperial proof. Sorry, it's 105 degrees imperial proof, which is the same as 60% ABV, which was the banana skin, which is why 60 degrees imperial was in there. But it's the 60% ABV is the same as 120 degrees American. Question 2, which of these releases from Isle of Arran is not a Cask Strength? We're looking for the one that is not a Cask Strength. A, the Bodega, B, Barrel Reserve, C, Quarter Cask. One of those Arran releases isn't a Cask Strength. Whiskey. Ben Whiskey with Molly is quoting me now. Easy quiz my arse. He's saying he slid on the banana skin. I bet you answered C and said 60. You were thinking 60% ABV, where it was 60 degrees proof. Maybe you slipped on the banana skin. There was an icon. There was a banana icon there helping you out, Ben. Maybe you're just a wee bit out of practice. Everybody's thinking that it's Arran Barrel Reserve, which is kind of interesting. The Barrel Reserve, you would kind of consider coming from a barrel or something. It should be higher ABV, but no, the Barrel Reserve is in fact a 43% product. It's an entry-level product for Arran. Well, the Bodega and Quarter Cask are Cask Strength. B for Barrel Reserve is the right answer. Question 3, which of these distilleries is not currently offering a core range Cask Strength? We're looking for a distillery that doesn't have a Cask Strength release as part of their current core range. Is it A, Glenlivet in Speyside, B, Glenmorangie in the Highlands, or C, Glengyle in Campbelltown? The region has nothing to do with it. I'm just adding words for the fun of it. I blame my slip on Q1 on my daughter starting to text me, Frank, you for the slip up on question 1 as well. There was a banana skin there, buddy. Just wow. Which of these distilleries does not have a current Cask Strength core offering? A. Glenlivet, B. Glenmorangie, C. Glengyle. Of course, Glenlivet has the Nadura, which is Cask Strength. Glengyle has their regular 8-year-old releases, Kilkerran 8-year-old, and they're heavily peated, I think, comes out of Cask Strength 2, does it? Or is it 46? No, I can see it from here. 57.4 is the one that I've seen on the shelf. It's Glenmorangie. And I always kind of have a whinge and I feel bad about this with Glenmorangie. I'd love to have their 10-year-old at a 46% ABV. I'd love to enjoy it at that or higher. I'd love to see Cask Strength Glenmorangie. I bet that's fabulous. I've got an independent Glenmorangie over there, but it's a secret Highland. I am told it's Glenmorangie. And it's lovely. I'd like to have an official release, please. Question 4. Which of these distilleries enjoy the lion's share of Scotch malt sales in France? Now, I don't know if I spotted Greg in from Paris earlier on, but he would know this immediately. I think most of you will too. Which of these 3 distilleries enjoy the majority of Scotch malt sales in France? Is it A. Stryth Islay, B. Glengrant, or C. Aberlour? Greg is in. And he's saying he's got a Cask Strength Glen malt, but it's not an OB. That's the difficulty. I think that they're missing a wee... We consider that Ardbeg with their Cor of Wrekin and Ugadal is owned by the same company. It's almost a wee bit odd that the Glenmorangie isn't out there with a beefier ABV. Now, don't get me wrong. There might be, the 25-year-old or something Glenmorangie might be out there at Cask Strength or something, but that's I'm not considering that a core range at all. I'm looking for something that's attainable that we can all get our hands on. Absolutely, this is an easy one, I hope, for everyone. The Aberlour, if you've ever been into anywhere in France, the whiskey behind the bar is almost always going to be a single malt Aberlour. By far the biggest selling malt in France. Arguably the reason that Pernod Ricard own so many Scottish malt distilleries is... Anyway, question 5. This is the exact same picture I had up last week, and I apologise to everyone because I took a bunch of pictures from Graham Fraser. This is credited to Graham Fraser once more, and I tried to... Basically, the sequence of the key, the legend that he'd given me, had slightly mixed up with the way the email was delivered to me. So I didn't check the still, and I told you last week that this was a Speyburn still. It is not. So this is a much easier one. This is my way of apologising to you this week. Are we looking at A, a Glengarry still, B, a Glengoyne still, or C, a Speyburn still? Graham contacted me afterwards to say, Roy, I just want you to point out that, and I think we're going to have to work out a way that for him to send the images to me and for them to arrive in the exact same order that he sent them, so that I can... Or for him to just to give me nice pictures and I do the matching up myself by just taking a moment to do a wee bit of research before I use free images given to me by the man. Graham, it's definitely not your fault, buddy, and thanks for pointing out the error on my part last week. I hang my head in shame. That means there were 2 questions last week that I made a mistake on. Listen, it happens. Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying, oh, okay. So I had 9 out of 10 last week. Fantastic, Greg. You're cashing in. Daniel Williams is saying, just name the file. It's a good idea. All the files were named generic names. It would be a good idea to name the file. But as I say, it's my fault. It's down to me doing a wee bit of research. And you can put the place in the metadata, says Ethan. So I hope everybody has worked out that this is clearly the wash still at Glengarry. This is Glengarry. So interestingly, if we looked at this today, I think, is this the wash still that is now direct fired? Or have they moved in a second wash still and direct fired a second one? Just trying to remember now. I know I shared it with you in a previous vPub. Gabriel Wilding is celebrating a 5 out of 5 already, as well as Jerry Miller, Falsgraf, and Danny Hebbington. Fantastic stuff. Question 6. Let's keep it going. This is pretty indulgent about Dramface. Listen, I want everybody to know about Dramface. I don't make any apologies for talking about it. I think it's a fantastic platform. I'm very, very, very pleased with the quality and the effort that's gone into Dramface, the writing talent that's there, the stuff that they're sharing, the opinions, the insight is fantastic. But earlier this week, Dramface reviewed 4 batches of the most recent release of what? What was it? Fascinating little piece. Was it A, Ardnamurchan AD releases, all 4 of the last batches? B, was it Bunna releases, all 4 of the last most recent batches? Or was it C, all 4 of the most recent Springbank 12-year-old Cask Strength batches? Falsgraph is saying, haven't had a look at Dramface lately. Oh, Falsgraph, some of the stuff you're missing. There's kind of light and easy, kind of just anecdotal pieces. There's deep dive scientific pieces where they're getting into kind of fermentation, where they're getting into flavor, where they're getting into, it's just depending on the writer, depending on their angle and perspective. It's fantastic for me to read as an editor. I love it. It's fantastic. Jimmy Legg is saying the Dramface podcast has really done it for me. Well worth subscribing just for that. There's another podcast coming out. Should be out next week, Jimmy, I hope. Season 2's just kicked off again. 2 weeks ago, we put out episode 1 of that, the podcast. I am enjoying that too. It's all part of the Dramface package. But thanks, Jimmy. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. And I can tell you, I think that most of you have got this right. Some of you are guessing a wee bit, I can see, but we did a review of Springbank 12-year-old Cask Strength. A wee bit of a flex there. Somebody's been able to get their hands on. Well, actually, it was only 3 out of 4. And for the 4th missing piece, they did what we do as a community, don't they? They got together with a friend and tried a friend's bottle for that one. But yeah, batch 20, 21, 22, and 23 was reviewed on Monday of last week by Tyree. Fantastic content from Tyree. Question 7. An Austrian investor with a very apt name is involved in a new distillery project. This is in Scotland, of course. What is the combination? What is the combo of an Austrian investor with a new distillery project in Scotland? Is it A, Ronald Grain at Ardgowan, B, Philip Stills at Cabrach, or C, Gerhardt Malt at Reavers? Alice saying, I listened to 3 Dramface podcasts last week while painting the hall. Al, I owe you a dram just for that alone. You star, thanks very much. Philip Stills, good name, says Asbjorn Palmer. Asbjorn, I think probably I'm making a mess of your name, buddy, but yes. Why is there a banana skin, says Jimmy. He's on alert. Erwin Laranagas saying, Roy, does anyone have any recommendations for a nice dram in Belfast? My wife and I will be there this coming Sunday and Monday. Erwin, that's amazing that you're coming over to Ireland. We have lots of Irish barflies, and if anybody can help Erwin out with a nice whiskey spot to go in Northern Ireland, in Belfast, give him a wee shout, guide him, please. Most of you have seemed to have got this right. Anybody that's been reading I mean, it must be hard for Ingvar Ron to keep up, but he's got a section in the back of the book on new distilleries. But he's actually got a separate section where he's talking about new distilleries that are in formation, that they're not actually producing yet. And it must be tough if you're just reading it paragraph by paragraph. The work that man must have to put in just to keep up right now is incredible. But I'm talking about A. Ronald Grain at Ardgowan. Jimmy, the banana skin was in there because I felt like the 2 that I had invented from my own head were far more believable than the truth. So I might just have left the banana skin in there from last week. Apologies, I hope it didn't throw you. 7 out of 7 for Gordon Fraser. He's getting excited again. Graham Young, 7 out of 7 as well. Terrific, Graham. You're always scoring strong. Danny Hebington on a 7 out of 7. He's admitting pure guesses. And Gino is also on a 7 out of 7 in competition with his pal Graham Young, no doubt. Jimmy Paul is on 7 out of 7 as well, along with Jerry Miller. And Pedro Asbjorn, 7 out of 7. Peter Box, some of them are saying that they're lucky. Lassie is on a 7 out of 7. Good to see Lassie in as well. Good to see Gino in. Good to see Peter Lee in, also on 7 out of 7. Sid Martin's here as well. Good to see you, Sid. Question 8. In the context of whisky production, what are spent lees? You might remember I asked a very similar question last week. This week I'm asking about what spent lees are. Spent lees are A, spirit still residue, B, wash still residue, C, fermentation residue. Jimmy slipped on the banana skin. He said Gerhard was a nice touch. I had to pick it. Absolutely everybody. With very, I've yet to see, oh no, one or two maybe I've got this one wrong. But absolutely, when we mentioned that last week, we talked about pot ale being wash still residue, and I mentioned back then that spent lees were spirit still residue. So just seeing if your memory was better than mine. It's difficult for me to remember the vPub week to week. In fact, when I went back and did some refresher work, let's say, on last year's Cask Strength vPub, I was amazed at some of the things that I was talking about. I couldn't remember half of it. It's an age thing, isn't it? Question 9, second from last question. Pip Hills was inspired to start what became the SMWS through which specific experience? What was it that made Pip Hills end up building the SMWS from scratch back in the early 80s? Was it A, a private tour of Glenfarclas? Was it B, a dram from a farmer friend? Or C, joint purchase of a Bamore sherry butt in the 1970s? Was it A, a private tour of Glenfarclas, B, a dram from a farmer friend, or C, a joint purchase of Bamore sherry butt in the 1970s? Everwind is pulling his parachute. He's saying, fair wind, malt mates. Everwind, it's always wonderful to have you in. I didn't even spot you were here tonight, buddy. But he's saying, got to run, not doing well on this quiz at all. Yikes. Oh dear. Having a bad one, Chris. Take care, my friend, and it's nice to have had you in. Whiskey Lock, Shane is in. Wonderful, Shane. Good to have you in, buddy. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're scoring okay on the quiz tonight, my friend. He thinks it's B, as the vast majority of you too. And Pedro is saying the podcast with this story is amazing. Terrific stuff. And Jimmy Legg is saying, did you make C up from scratch, you maniac? Yes, I might have. It was absolutely a dram from a farmer friend. They were out walking, and they met the friend that was walking with them, took them back to a friend's farm cottage, and they had a quarter cask on the go of Glenfarclas. He took a dram of it, and he had never tasted anything like it in his life. Gordon Fraser is saying 9 out of 9. I am sweating. Peter Box. Okay, let's just pause for a minute to see who's got a chance of celebrating a 10 out of 10 tonight. Gordon Fraser. Go for it, Gordon. Peter Box is in the same place as well as Andrew Butler. Andrew, I was in the Bonaccord today, and I missed everyone. I missed Julie, I missed Paul, I missed everyone, and I forgot. I'll be able to pick that up next week, buddy. Don't worry. Pedro is on 9 out of 9. Jerry Miller is on a 9 out of 9 as well. Oh, it's jumped. Graham Young, 9 out of 9. Gabriel Wilding. Gabriel, good to see you in, buddy. Jimmy Paul on a 9 out of 9. Andrew Pierce. Wow, there's got to be 10 out of 10s happening tonight. Andrew's quite right. It is ASHAT time. The last question is always going to be an ASHAT question. It's always what it's about. Graham Young, 9 out of 9. Lassie, 9 out of 9 as well. Gordon Fraser saying, oh no. Danny Evanton, 9 out of 9. Thanks to chat and one guess. It's great stuff. Just admit it, buddy. Peter Lee also on a 9 out of 9. And Andrew Butler is saying, I was going to ask, but I didn't want to nag. Andrew, listen, don't worry. This is probably the most acute, busiest week I've ever had in my time in whiskey. I'm a huge apology out to everybody that's passing through Glasgow, and I'm not getting a chance to meet up with you. It's shameful, but it's just, I really am struggling to find the time to catch my breath just now. Let's move into the ASHAT at the end. It's always going to be a good bit of fun. How many Scotch malt distilleries in current operation can claim their founding year in the 18th century? So we're looking for any distillery that can say they were founded in the 1700s. How many of them are there? This is an asshat. Is it about the same as A, currently operating Islay distilleries? Is it about the same as B, currently operating island distilleries? Or is it C, about the same as currently operating lowland distilleries located in Fife? Gordon Fraser is saying guess time, guess time, guess time. So there are an amount of currently operating distilleries who can say whether it's true or factual or not, or whether there's a little bit of let's say artistic or poetic license in there, that can put their founding year down in the 18th century, 1700s. I'm asking, how many are there? Is it the same as the amount of Islay distilleries, the same amount of island distilleries, or the same as the amount of lowland distilleries currently operating in Fife? Absolutely no idea, says Blair. That's the asshat inside out, buddy. And he's going for B, going for island distilleries. This is what it's all about. I understand how much you're going to hate me if you're sitting on a 9 out of 9 or a chance of a really high score or your first ever pass mark and a really horrible question like this comes along at the end. That's why Jimmy Legg named this the asshat way back. And Jimmy, I don't even know when it was, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, longer. Is lag considered a lowland or an island? I would consider that lag is a lowland island. But you don't need to worry about that. It's an island here tonight, Peathead Frank. I'm asking for lowland distilleries that are operating in Fife. And even if Lag is a lowland distillery, it's certainly not in Fife. I can tell you all, I'll put you out your misery, that it is the same as currently operating Islay distilleries. There are 9, and I think I wrote them down for your listening pleasure. We have 18th century founding year distilleries: Bowmore, Balblair, Blair Athol, Glengeary, Glenturret, Highland Park, Oban, Strathyla, and Tobermory. 9 distilleries. How did we get on? Let's see it. Who managed the 10 out of 10 tonight? 7 out of 10. Ben is saying he's happy with that. I would suggest that that's a good score, buddy. A 7 out of 10. I think it's probably still my record. I might have managed an 8 out of 10 once. 8 out of 10 for Pinch Hitter Whiskey Lounge. But 8 out of 10, not a bad out. Pinch Hitter, nice to welcome you in, and that's a fantastic score. 9 out of 10, Bruno Martins. James Morgan is in. Good to see you, James. He's laughing and saying, my bad. Didn't catch your score, James. I'm scrolling down now. Gordon Fraser. Oh, he's going to hate me. Sorry, buddy. 9 out of 10. Never go for C on the asshat, says Tom Elmer. 8 out of 10. Scotty Mac 4 on a 7. Scotty Mac, good to welcome you. It's a good score. Shame. 5 out of 10. I was suggesting that's shameful. No, buddy, that's a pass mark. Take it. Staying at 7 out of 10. Greg's Whiskey Guide. A strong score still, Greg. Bruno, Gabriel is on 9. Stefan is saying 7 out of 10. I never liked you, Roy. Buddy. Sid Martin on a 7. I'm laughing. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing because of how well you all take this. It's jumped now and I've missed it. Dang. Jerry Miller is celebrating a 10 out of 10. Fantastic, buddy. Superb to you. I'm missing everybody. Bruno Martin's on a 9. Mikey Hay on an 8. Erwin on a 7. Jimmy Jazz on a 7. It looks like that's hit a few people tonight. Whiskey with Molly. I already picked up. Already got your 7 out of 10, Ben. I'm looking for 10s. I might have missed the 10s. Isla saved me, says Brian. We're getting some spam in at the end. Hopefully that hopefully we can get rid of can I block that? Hopefully some of the moderators can pick that up. I thought the asshat was easy, says Andrew Butler. And P Head is screaming trolls. Yeah, hopefully somebody can clean it up. Excellent stuff. Listen, fly me to Scotland, Jimmy Legacy, and he's bought me a dram, and I'll be your beautiful assistant this week. Fly you to Scotland, indeed, buddy. You're not going to be able to do that one day yourself. Thanks for the dram again, Jimmy. Thanks always. This is a 2021 Bunnahabhain I've picked up, and I can even see the colour just looking in the glasses. The 2022 is much more sherry rich. Not that that means anything on the whisky experience, but it's wonderful that it's natural colour, so we can talk about it. Peter Lee saying, I met up with Andrew Butler in Glasgow, doing my rounds, as they say. Peter, you're fantastic. Thanks very much for meeting up with him. I hope you had a nice time. And Rick Johnson is saying, thanks for another great lineup of spirits and spirited discussion, Roy. Looking forward to Saturday. Thanks very much, Rick. I'm looking forward to it too. And Whiskey with Molly saying, bring on the Oswas. So from 6 o'clock on Saturday, UK time, Ralphie and I are going to be sitting here, and we're going to finally let everybody know what made it through, what's won this year, and also we will give you your voice too. Whatever your top 10 was, whatever made it to the top of the charts in terms of people's choice. I imagine this people's choice will build year on year on year, because people will start to see the value that it has. And I think what's happening just now is people are voting and saying, oh, I can go with these votes, I can vibe with that. And they're just skipping the people's choice. They don't realise the people's choice is actually a very, very important feedback tool for everyone. And Al has bought me a wee dram to say good luck for Saturday, Roy. Al, that's very much appreciated, my friend. I'm looking forward to it. I hope I can welcome you there. Thanks for the dram. Cheers. So there we have it. Cask Strength remains very much a niche product, but it's becoming more and more and more available to us all the time. I predict that with resources being so tight right now, it might be attractive for more of these to appear soon. It's going to be interesting to see how they come out, what they're going to be based on, what they're going to be targeted at, and how much they're going to cost, and how well they're going to be received. I still think that it's a niche part of our whisky experience. Do all of us want to sit down and drink Cask Strength whiskies all of the time? No. I don't even think the biggest whisky geek wants to do that. I think sometimes we want to sit down and sip something light, balanced, easy, and elegant, something that doesn't shout for our attention and ask us to carry water around with us everywhere. Cask Strength is a very, very specific thing. It's not always all about Cask Strength all the time, but it's nice to have it, especially when you're in the mood, and especially when it's good. The Bunnahabhain 2022 is good. I'm very pleased. Gino Kimo is saying, hey, have a great week, Roy. Thanks for this great vPub. Thank you very much, Gino. Thank you for being able to enjoy this. And Blair is saying, I need to head off, but damn, it's been good to be back. Thanks for another great evening, and see you next week at the Whisky Festival. Blair, I can't wait for that. Remember, one of you, send me an email, whiskey@aquavita.com if you're after a ticket. It's first come, first served. There's only one. So ping me if you think that you can make it to Glasgow next week for the festival. Until then, I'm going to raise this glass of the nicest dram I've enjoyed in recent times, actually, in the last couple of weeks. This Bunnahabhain has made me very, very happy. It's the perfect time of year for it too. I hope you enjoy it too. Andy, Helen, make sure you tell Andy that his 2022 release is going to put a smile right back on his face again. She's saying, another fine laid-back vPub. See you at the weekend. Break a leg. Thank you very much. And Whiskey with Molly gifted 5 Aquavitae memberships. You star. And Lassie is saying, lovely vPub. See you all on Saturday. Thank you very much, Lassie. Thank you, everyone. Until Saturday and until next week's vPub, I'll do what I always do, and I'll raise this glass, and I'll tell you that I'm very, very grateful. Thank you all for just spending another lovely Thursday night with me. I look forward to welcoming you back whenever you're here Saturday or next week, or whenever it may be. I'll raise this glass of tasty Bunnahabhain and tell you you're all very dearly loved, and until next time, Slanch va.